A lot of people approach me about adrenal issues or adrenal fatigue or adrenal exhaustion. And I'm well aware that adrenal fatigue is not technically recognized as a medical term. But I do think a lot of women relate to the adrenals and fatigue. We put them together. A lot of women say, yeah, I have adrenal fatigue. So that's why I stick to using it because it's relatable for most women. Now, I've done posts and videos in the past explaining adrenal fatigue, and I think it's really important because I see it more and more and more as my weeks in my practice go on and I'm introduced to new clients. There's a lot of exhaustion in women. So I have done a video on how to recover in regards to supplements and what to do to recover your adrenals. In this one, we'll touch on the symptoms again, but I wanted to go through 7 tests that you can do at home. So first, we've got the more common symptoms, that kind of feeling of like just exhaustion. I'm just exhausted all the time. Now, it's important to understand there are all of these symptoms of adrenal fatigue. Some women will experience them all. Some women might experience just 3 of them. There's bio-individualities, and then women have different levels of resiliency, and we all have different demands on our life. But this exhaustion is generally quite prevalent where there is adrenal fatigue. Some women are going to be exhausted all day, like from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed. Some women feel great in the morning because they're just wired with high adrenaline, which is not the same as the dawn effect or the cortisol awakening response. This adrenaline, women like will have 5 hours sleep and they're like, I feel fantastic. And I say, wait and see. As the day goes on, you will crash and then you will most likely need a nap or coffee or sugar. You won't be able to function. So this is really common. I have had instances with my clients where they'll wake up and for the first hour only, they feel really good. And then they almost get gassed and they're like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I want to go to bed. And they haven't even had their morning coffee yet. They're just exhausted. Then there's other instances that as the day goes on, again, women need a nap. Come 6 p.m., they're like, I'm out. I have nothing left in the tank. And then there's other instances where women will get a second wind, like a toddler, and they'll get this adrenaline spike as their adrenals try to compensate for the struggle or the lack of energy, and they'll get this big adrenal dump, and then they'll start doing crazy stuff like spring cleaning or cleaning the house at 10 o'clock at night, and they will struggle to fall asleep. Insomnia can be part of adrenal fatigue where you fall asleep fine and then you just wake multiple times throughout the night, or you wake and you can't fall back asleep. So, in general, sleep issues, exhaustion are a big part of adrenal fatigue. More commonly than not, though, we'll see women and they're just exhausted and they just sleep and sleep and sleep and they just can't feel recovered or refreshed or energized. And it's like you're really trying to catch up on your sleep. And in my other videos, I did say the number one prescription for adrenal exhaustion or adrenal fatigue is sleep and rest. And if possible, take 2 weeks off work and life again, if possible, and just sleep and rest and really recover your adrenals and your central nervous system. I had a client and her adrenals were just so shot that for her to walk from one side of her dining room to the other, it gassed her and she had to sit down. It took us months to recover her adrenals before she actually was able to go out for a walk outside. And then we had to build and build and build. And that one thing that helped us a lot there was a lot of magnesium. Magnesium is essential for the adrenals. Then we have the low motivation, the malaise, the low mood, chronic feeling of anxiety, impending doom, just an overactive stress response, that inability to focus And not just on like specific things, just anything. You're like, I can't focus. I don't have the capacity for this today. I need to take it a bit easier. Maybe the most you can tolerate would be some music or light reading. Like you just don't have it in you to think of anything too complicated or too intense, or even listen to podcasts or read books that would be, let's say, more educational. You're like, I just don't have the bandwidth. This can last for weeks. This can last for a few days, depending again how fast you recover and your resiliency. And there can be a lot of weepiness and feeling like you can't control your thoughts as well. Then other symptoms that would show us that there's adrenal issues would be if you are chronically sick, you can't shake that flu, head cold, you're chronically getting sinus issues, so you always have a cough. This can be a sign that your body is struggling, the adrenals are not recovering, therefore the rest of your body is not recovering. Then we could have other symptoms showing us that there's an elevated immune or inflammatory response because of the stress response. And that could be like skin issues. It could even be breakouts because the adrenals will directly affect the sex hormones. So these are things that even new allergies or nasal drip or watery eyes or symptoms that we'd say, oh, I have seasonal allergies, but I've never had this before. That again could be an adrenal issue. So there are some things you can do at home. We don't have a direct test for adrenal fatigue, and these tests are not specific diagnoses. As I say to my clients all the time, no test is going to be as good as your symptom picture. You know your body better than anyone else, and if your body's telling you there's something wrong, there's probably something wrong. But these tests can help you understand your body and maybe direct you better towards what might be happening in your body. Now, I shared these tests on my Instagram and Facebook business page, and I'll share the screen now. So that's Shemaine's Model Health on Instagram and Facebook. And in this, I said I gave 7 tests to do at home. There are some other tests that we could look at, but they're not always definitive, like the grip test, because the grip test can be influenced by um, muscle mass and strength overall. So it's not necessarily going to be because of adrenal issues. Um, so and then I suppose the symptom picture would be another test, but that will fall into what we're already talking about. Like these are going to pretty much cover all of that. So the 7 tests you can do at home, my first one would be the basal metabolic test. So the basal metabolic test is where you're taking your temperature. Generally, we're doing it first thing in the morning when we wake up, and that can then give us an indication of what is happening with our thyroid. Now, our thyroid and our adrenals, they're directly intertwined. They're like sister and sister. What happens to one happens to the other. So if you have thyroid issues, you most likely have adrenal issues. And if you have adrenal issues, you most likely have thyroid issues. Like you can't have something happen to one without the other. And the basal metabolic test, which we usually use to monitor what's happening with the thyroid and metabolism, can really be helpful for the adrenals. So when we do the basal temperature, yeah, you can do it in the morning, but sometimes what I'll do is after meals or in the afternoon, especially if you find that you're exhausted or very feeling very cold in the afternoon around 4 p.m., that can be a sign that there are adrenal issues. So if you take your temperature 30 to 40 minutes after a meal, the temperature should increase. If it doesn't, if it drops more, that can be an adrenal response. The same with the orthostatic test, which is your heart rate test. Now, we most of the time people are going to do this where they lie down and you get up really fast. If you feel dizzy or you see a huge jump in your blood pressure or even a big drop, that can be indicative that there are adrenal issues. You can also see the heart rate test or do the heart rate test after a meal, again, about 30 to 40 minutes. And if you notice that your heart rate elevates, that could be indicative of a stress response. And sometimes that can be depending on what you ate. Did you eat an allergenic or inflammatory food? If your heart rate drops a lot, again, that's an indication that your body was already stressed and the foods help to push down that stress response, especially if there's carbs involved. Another one I really like is the heart rate variable test or HRV. You would track your HRV when you sleep, and you can do it with a Whoop or you can do it with an Aura ring. And there's a couple of other watches that will, or wearables that will track HRV. Ideally, when you go asleep, this is when you get into your rest and digest and recovery and restore and regenerative mode. So what we would hope to see is that your HRV is very high, like very high. Most people don't get more than 70 or 80 on their HRV. I like to see mine around 110. But if it's really low, it's telling you that you're not recovering properly and your body is very stressed during sleep. And that can be a really valuable tool. You could also then look at REM sleep and deep sleep. The next one then would be the pupil response. So the pupil response is where you get a little torch or you've had the doctor use his light and shine it into your pupils or wave it like that. What we're trying to do is hold the light at the side of our eye. You don't shine it directly into your iris at the side. And what should happen, it's just like when you look at the sun, don't look directly at the sun, that your pupil will constrict. And when this happens, this is just controlling the amount of light that comes in. The same if you go into a dark room, your pupils will contract. So they'll widen to try take in as much light as they can. Now, when they constrict, they should, at the very least, be able to stay constricted for 10 or more seconds. If you notice that they start fluttering or opening in and out, or as you're holding that restriction or constriction, it slowly starts to expand because your adrenals, your body's response cannot hold that constriction properly. And that can be a sign that there are adrenal issues. And the pupil test has been used for a long time throughout natural medicine and holistic medicine. Naturopaths use it still to this day, I believe. The next one is the breath hold. And the breath hold will also sometimes be called CO2 tolerance. This is where you're going to take a breath and you're going to hold it for as long as you can. Anything shorter than 30, 40 seconds can indicate that you have an issue with CO2 tolerance, and basically you're living in that stress response breathing pattern. Many of us have came across somatic breath work or some sort of breath work to help you relax your stress response, because our breathing really does get altered when that stress response is elevated or the adrenals are struggling. We're almost trying to catch our breath. And one common thing in a very stressed body, someone will say, they'll sigh a couple of times or they'll take extra breaths. They can't get their breath. And there's usually a magnesium deficiency involved in there too. So again, what I said in the beginning of this video is I had used a lot of magnesium with that client to help her recover her adrenals. So don't underestimate the power of magnesium. So the next one, and this came up a few times in a conversation with a client recently, exercise recovery. So recovery in the aspect like it's taken me longer to recover and get back to the gym, or I have DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, for longer. I feel more sore, feel more inflamed. Generally, when we get muscle soreness, might last for a day, depending on the workout, of course. But if it's taking you longer than that to recover, this is an adrenal issue. If you go into the gym or you go to do a workout and you find that you cannot perform the way you used to, or your power output or your endurance is not the same, hey, I can't bench press as much as I used to. It could be that your adrenals and your central nervous system are completely shot. Of course, recovery is involved in that. And there's other things like under eating, but this definitely can be a factor. Not recovering well can really show you that your body overall is struggling to recover. Then another one is your daily energy rhythm. You should monitor, regardless if you think you've adrenal issues or not, you should be monitoring your energy throughout the day. I know we all get so busy with the hustle and bustle and career life and mom life and all of that, that we almost are just moving through our days. We're just on autopilot, but you really need to become aware. Are you exhausted upon waking? Do you feel refreshed? How did you sleep last night? What time did you go to bed? What time did you wake up? Did you dream? How long did it take you to fall back asleep? Did you wake up during the night? Were you able to fall back asleep pretty fast after waking up? So these are really important. Do you feel like we need to nap during the day? Have you recognized the certain time of the day where you feel like you're crashing and you need a bit of a pick me up? So all of these things can show if you're running on adrenaline or you have a dysregulated cortisol rhythm. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not making any cortisol or that you're only pumping out high cortisol. It could be just completely dysregulated and you're on this roller coaster of hormones throughout the day. So like I said, these tests, they're not to be utilized as like a diagnostic tool. They're to be utilized to help you understand your body. And they're not the only things that can show us their adrenal issues. And they're not just for adrenal issues. They can, of course, be helpful with other issues you may be experiencing. But I really think that if we can become more aware of our body and do a lot of this more testing at home, then it's easier for us to come across the solution and then recognize I feel better when I do this, or this seems to be helping. I think, like I mentioned, adrenal fatigue, burnout, exhaustion, it's a huge topic now. And I hope to release my next guide over the next few weeks on the adrenals and how to recover the adrenals and what supplements to take and what steps to take and really understand what's happening in your body. Because, like I said, if you have adrenal issues, you will have thyroid issues and all the fun stuff that comes with that. But if you have adrenal issues, and if you've ever had adrenal issues, and I have, and Lord knows I've experienced burnout, um, and more recently, a lot of adrenal issues while dealing with grief. Grief is another big thing that can cause adrenal issues. That it really, really, really will affect your quality of life, right down to the simple things I mentioned. Enjoying your days with your kids, reading your favorite books, you just don't have it in you. You just don't have any, like it's a hard thing to manage. So hopefully I'll have that guide soon, but I really hope this was helpful to you. Lastly, a couple of months, my colleague and mentor and friend Carol Peterson and I had a conversation on the podcast specifically about adrenal fatigue and how it affects the hormones overall, specifically the sex hormones. And we went a lot into methylation there as well. You might like to check that out. That is on my YouTube channel or up on the podcasts under Shmane's Model Health on YouTube and Find Your Model Health on the podcasts. But and I have a lot of other content on electrolytes and how important they are for the adrenals. Vitamin C, so important for the adrenals. Creatine can be helpful, except women, especially where there are adrenal issues and high adrenaline, need to be careful with the amount of creatine they're using. But again, I hope you found this really helpful. Watch out for more content because I think this is definitely the way forward for a lot of women. And also, while you're fixing the adrenals, you help to fix the thyroid and a lot of other issues. Okay, everyone, thank you for spending some time with me. Let me know if you have any questions or feedback in the comments. Bye bye.